How's it going, everyone? CJ from On The Grow here, and today we have another hydroponic nutrient test, this time using FloraGro for the first time ever, and the crop of purple sprouting broccoli. So stay tuned for the test. Alright, you guys, we are back with another hydroponic nutrient test, this time using FloraGro. I'm really excited because we like to test out different types of hydroponic nutrients to see how we can affect the growth, appearance, and taste of microgreens throughout the entire grow process. This is a new nutrient for us. We have not used this one. We bought it from True Leaf Market, and we're really excited to test this one out, though I am a little disappointed to find out that General Hydroponics, the company that makes this, is actually owned by Monsanto, which is a pretty bad company. Nonetheless though, we got the hydroponic nutrient in our space, so we're gonna go ahead and test it out to see how it performs, because it actually doesn't require very much nutrient at all, so it should be very cost effective in the long run. So let's quickly talk about the test, and then we'll talk about the actual nutrients themselves. So I have seeded each one of these trays with 20 grams of purple sprouting broccoli per tray. The seed we got from True Leaf Market, and we are going to be growing on a medium that is called coco coir. This is ground up coconut husk, and it works very, very well to hold water, and it provides us with really solid germination and acts as a good medium for us to add nutrients into, and because it does not have a lot of nutrients of its own. What we have done so far for this crop is we have put this through a blackout period that was 4 days total, which breaks down to 3 days with weight on top and 1 day of blackout. This was actually randomized during the germination process, so we actually had them stacked in the order of purple, orange. That way we randomize it a little bit, and not all the weights at the bottom or at the top, and the trays get a little bit more even germination throughout. So what we are going to be doing for this test is the 2 orange trays are going to be our FloraGro groups, and the 2 purple trays are going to receive nothing but filtered water that has been pH balanced to 6.0. As for the 2 FloraGro trays, I have gone ahead and pre-mixed a reservoir of nutrients with the FloraGro, and I've mixed it at the suggested rate of 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. We have 2 gallons, so I have done half a teaspoon for the 2-gallon reservoir, and I pH balanced this little bucket reservoir to the 6.0 range. So let's double check our crop and make sure that everything looks pretty even going into this trial. And I am feeling like everything does look quite even, and all the growth and germination on all of these trays looks super solid, and I think that this is going to be a really great test. So you can tell that we're doing 2 trays of each for this. In the past, usually whenever I test out nutrients, I'll only do 1 tray versus a control group. And what I realize is there could be a lot of factors that kind of throw off that 1 tray, so I'm thinking that 2 trays of each will help us determine a better baseline for each group. So now that we have basically got everything ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and get these placed onto a shelf, and then I'm going to add their specific nutrients. So again, the orange trays are going to get their FloraGro, and the purple trays are going to get water that has just been pH balanced to the 6.0 range. That way it's as close as possible to the water over here, but without nutrients. All right, so I have got a space cleared off on a shelf now. I'm gonna get these placed on, and since the plants are going into the light, that is the day that we begin adding nutrients. So again, none of these have had nutrients. These have had all the exact same start, which was just misting these with plain filtered water throughout the germination process. We kept everything as even as possible. Okay, so one thing I'm going to do for this test is I'm actually going to slightly randomize on this shelf as well. I'm gonna put 1 tray of the plain water group close to the fan, just like the FloraGro, and then another tray of the FloraGro over towards the other side, and having the other regular water group at the end. The reason is the trays on the ends will get less light, so we try to randomize just a little bit on these shelves so that we can try to get the best results possible and try to keep it even as we possibly can. Now that I've got this on the shelf, I'm going to add just a little bit of water because my medium here is still quite moist. I can squeeze it and feel that there's a decent amount of water still in that coco coir. So I'm probably only going to give about 1 cup of water to each one of these groups. So the orange trays, for the very last time, are going to get 1 cup of the FloraGro, and the purple trays, again, are our water groups, so those are going to get 1 cup of just plain water, pH balance to 6.0. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll see you guys over the next few days for some updates, and then hopefully on harvest day we get some awesome results. So I'll see you guys in a few days. FloraGro, day 11. All right, you guys, today we are on day 14 of this hydroponic nutrient test using FloraGro against pH balanced water. And the results honestly look pretty dang similar throughout all of these. I'm not seeing anything that like really strikes me as being more ahead of the other groups. So let's go ahead and get up and close. So if you guys will remember, the 2 orange trays are FloraGro groups, and the 2 purple trays are water groups that had the same filtered water that the FloraGro used, pH balanced to the 6.0 range so that it is matching with the pH of the FloraGro. So now as for appearance, let's start over here on this first FloraGro tray. So as for the cotyledon size, it is actually quite mixed. There are some very small cotyledons, there are some large cotyledons, but as for the uniformity of the growth, it seems pretty dang solid. It's basically like a nice flat plateau, so it's very even growth. I'm not seeing too sporadic growth where there's some higher, some lower, or anything like that. As for the coloration of the cotyledons, they are nice and green. And as for the inner canopy, there are some slow starters down there, but not too many at all. Onto our first water tray. Now the cotyledons, I would say, are substantially smaller on some of these compared to the FloraGro group, but the FloraGro does have some really small ones similar to this water group. So as for the height and overall appearance of this water group, you'll notice it has more of a mound to it, so there's a lot more rounding. It's not as flat and even as the FloraGro groups, but overall I'm very happy with the growth on this. And let's take a look at the inner canopy, and it seems like there's a good amount of slow growth in there, so we'll have to be a little careful when we go to harvest, because you're gonna have stuff like this mixed into your canopy, and we just need to be cautious of that because it doesn't make for a very pretty product in the end, and I don't know that I want to eat little shriveled up cotyledons there. And on to our second FloraGro group. Same thing, at first glance at the appearance, it looks very nice and even. There is a little bit more mounding on this one compared to our first FloraGro, so that's something that I'm seeing here. As for the cotyledon size, again, same thing. There's a nice mix of both very small cotyledons and very large cotyledons. The coloration on all these is a nice green, very similar to the water groups. Nothing that I'm seeing as striking me very different. The undergrowth seems to be nice, and I am seeing a lot of root hairs. That actually looks like mold, but that is root hairs down there, and I can tell because it's coming from the crop and I can see the actual roots coming off of it. So that's pretty interesting. I am seeing a little bit of slower growth down there, so we are going to have a good amount of the small cotyledons mixed in, but I'm not seeing them kind of browning like I did on the water group. Let's get this mixed up so it looks all pretty again, and on to the last water group. Again, very solid growth. I'm very happy with this. It's nice and uniform. It does have a little bit of rounding, but overall the cotyledon size is nice. The coloration's great. And as for undergrowth, there's not a whole lot. It actually seems to be better, much better than the first water tray. And the height of that tray seems to be very similar to our tallest FloraGro tray. So at first glance, I'm not seeing a whole lot of differences between these trays. So what we're gonna do now is go ahead and get all these harvested. I'll set some aside from each group. We'll get the harvest weights, then we will do a blind taste test, and hopefully we'll get some kind of differences there, because so far everything looks pretty similar and I'm not seeing any huge advantages of using FloraGro over just regular water. So I'll see you guys in just a moment once I have harvested all of these trays. All right, so I finished harvesting all 4 of the trays, and now let's discuss all of their harvest weights. So I'm going to start with the water group over here. So this is our water group and this is our FloraGro group. Starting with our water groups, one tray had a harvest weight of 265 grams, which is 9.3 ounces. And the other group had a harvest weight of 269 grams, which is 9.5 ounces. Onto the FloraGro, we had a total harvest weight for one tray of 282 grams, which is 10 ounces. And the other group had a harvest weight of 289 grams, which is 10.2 ounces. So as for the weights, there was only a 20-gram difference between the FloraGro group and the water-only group, which is not very surprising because this was used at a very mild application rate at 0.25 teaspoons per gallon. So the first thing I've kind of noticed whenever I was harvesting these is that 2 groups were slightly shorter and 2 groups were slightly longer. And for a second I was like, why is this? And then I realized what happened is this is the tray that was on the outside edge over here, and this was the tray that was on the outside edge on the other side. So generally when trays are on the outside edge, they will try to stretch a little bit more to get that light because they're not getting the full effect of all this light coming in from all this angle and hitting it. They're getting, you know, only a little bit from this edge instead of having that extended light coming out. So that's why these 2 groups are slightly taller. and I'm glad I figured that out. As for the coloration on all of these groups, I noticed that the two middle groups had the most color, and I think that's because they had the most access to the light. As for their height and the cotyledon size, it's very comparable. There's not really anything that I'm seeing a huge difference between the water and the FloraGro groups. I would say that the water group looks like it has a little bit more purple in that stem, but I mean, as for the general overall, it would be really hard to tell the difference between these two. If somebody gave me a blind guess at which one was which, I would say it would be hard to say which one had nutrients, basically. So as for the FloraGro group and the water group, these two were on the outside. I noticed that the FloraGro had a little bit more purple in the stem color, and for the water group, I noticed it was a lot more white. There was a little bit of purple in there. I mean, it's very, very faint for that water group, but compared to the FloraGro, you're just noticing a lot more of that purple. So again, as for appearance between the two groups, there's still nothing that's really like, hey, the FloraGro did better than the water group. It was just that slight 20-gram difference between the two trays. So now let's go ahead and move on to a blind taste testing. So what I have done is I have pulled out my sleepy mask. Don't judge me. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on, and Mandy is gonna choose from these groups. Now remember, the group on this side is FloraGro, so Mandy, show that whenever you grab from a group. So Mandy, you choose one, and I will stand back here with my hand out, ready to taste.
Try to get them apart one-handed.
Boop de boop. All right, so this is the first taste test. Again, I don't know which group this is. I'm gonna wad it up. Oh my God, it was a lot.
I tried to give you a little bit, but I only got one hand over here.
Nice brassica flavor. It's not too strong. It creeps. So the brassica flavor comes on, it comes on soft and then gets a little bit stronger. And towards the end, you get that nice kind of egg flavor that's really common with brassicas. So for a broccoli, that's a lot chewier than I would prefer. But overall, happy with it. Next one. Okay, this is group 2. Try to contain this. That's much, much juicier. As for the flavor, it's actually a little interesting. There's almost like a slight spice to it. As for the brassica flavor, it was not as potent as the first group. There was a slight spice with the purple sprouting broccoli, which I don't really quite understand. And it's very mild spice. It's not like a mustard spice. It was just very, very mild. As for the juiciness, very juicy, not as fibrous. It felt like it had a nice crunch to it, but it didn't stick around like a pea tendril where you have to really chew that woodiness to it. So overall, happy with it, though the slight spice was confusing for a broccoli. Find my hand spot.
Trying to get them apart.
Okay. I like the little pat. Trying to send me hand signals. All right. Group or taste test 3. I wonder if there's like a bitterness to it. Again, weird kind of spice to it. I feel like whatever that was the same as the last group. Again, it was very juicy. Brassica flavor just wasn't as potent. And it had that slight weird spice for broccoli.
Very last one. Now if I can just get apart from each other.
I actually like doing these taste tests because this is kind of like taking vitamins. Broccoli are so good for you. Especially the microgreens. All right, trying to wad all this up. Very crunchy, very juicy. It's kind of weird. Even that one has like a little bit of that spice to it. Okay. It's sticking around for longer. I feel like this is part of that first group that we taste tested. Unless I'm just completely blotching this, but who knows. Overall, like the flavor. Again, it's a nice brassica flavor. There was that slight like very, very mild kind of spice to it. I could just feel it on the back sides of my tongue, which is kind of creeping. So overall, I liked all of those groups, though the second taste and the third taste just had like a decently spiciness to it, not like the fourth or the first group. So anyways, that's it for my taste test. So let's talk about, oh my God, that is bright. Going from like black to like all this light is, wow, that was intense. Okay, so what was the first group?
The first one was this one.
Okay, that tasted really good.
Okay, second.
Second was that? Okay, interesting.
Third.
I wonder if it's the outside.
That's what I was thinking too.
Interesting. Okay, so she said the first group was the inside water tray. The second taste was the outside water tray. Third taste was outside FloraGro, and the fourth was the inside FloraGro. So super interesting that we saw the spiciness was on the outside groups. Interesting. This is kind of fun. I like these blind taste tests. It kind of like switches it up. So that's something I've never really noticed about these crops, and I really enjoyed the fact that we did a blind taste test on this one so that I could really kind of just dive in there and discover those flavors. So super interesting. I enjoyed the inner trays more, which makes the most sense. They were the most colorful, and generally, if they're a little bit shorter, that means they had ample lighting. So I would think that it's a healthier crop because it had a better flavor. And as for the appearance, it had a lot more purple in both of those stems. So I would assume that the appearance, taste, and the shorter height, even though it had the similar harvest weights to everything else, means it was a healthier product. And I am happy with that. That was really fun doing that blind taste test. And I am extremely happy with discovering that the inside trays tasted better than the outside trays. That's something I've never noticed in our 1 year of doing this, is that the inside trays could potentially have a different taste than the outside trays. Super cool to discover that. Okay, and now I have to choose an overall winner for the taste. I'm going to have to go with the very first one that I tasted because it just had a ton of flavor to it. So the water only on the inside one had the best flavor. I would say that the inside FloraGro was a strong second, and these outside ones with their slight spice to them wasn't my favorite for broccoli. That definitely wasn't my favorite. It still tasted really good, but I prefer not to have that compared to what I tasted on these inside trays. That makes me think that I need to figure out a better way of getting light to these outside trays so that we can get a more balanced, even growth across all of our trays instead of having a slight taste difference between an outside tray and an inside tray. Okay, if I had to choose an overall winner between water or FloraGro for this experiment, I'm gonna have to go with the water groups. I had the best flavor with that first inside tray. It tasted so amazing, and I was very happy with the coloration on it, the height on it. It was much easier to do. I didn't have to mix any nutrients. It was just pH balanced water to the 6.0 range. Now, if I wanted to get a little bit more harvest weight, I would probably use this FloraGro. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this product just because I don't like when they add food coloring or something to a product. Just leave it the natural color, whatever it may be, and I'd be a lot happier using it. As for the cost of using this throughout this grow, it was only an added 4 cents per tray. So to get 20 more grams for 4 cents, that might be worth it to some people. For me personally, I'm gonna stick to pure water if I had to choose between FloraGro and water. What I will do is I want to actually use this FloraGro in the future at a stronger ratio. So if you guys will remember, we use this at 1/4 teaspoon per gallon because that's what it says for cuttings and seedlings. I would like to step it down to that general purpose mild vegetative one, which is 1 teaspoon per gallon. I'm curious to see if we can get much stronger growth out of this product using it at a much higher ratio there. So even at 1 teaspoon per gallon, that is still very, very mild to add into your nutrient solution or your water reservoir, and I think that it could be worth it. So again, overall winner for this entire experiment, I'm gonna have to go with the water group just because it does such a great job. I didn't have to mix any nutrients. It was very easy to do, and it provided us with solid growth, appearance, and taste. And that is it for this experiment. Like I said, I'm gonna be continuing to play with this nutrient solution to see if we can get some kind of fun results in the future, maybe using it slightly stronger. I don't know that I'm gonna go any weaker with it because that was already very mild, so we'll probably just end up bumping this up and seeing what kind of growth we can crank out with a much higher ratio. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to give us a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give us a thumbs down. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below, and we'd love to get those answered for you as soon as we possibly can. Our Instagram and our Facebook are both at On The Grow Farms. Our website is www.onthegrow.net. Thank you so much. Have a great day and keep on believing. Don't be wasteful, people.